everyone, True Deal Tom here. A certain commenter suggested that I make a video on physical removal, and I realized that no one else had really expanded on it, so I thought it was a clever idea, so thanks for the comment, mate. But anyway, I thought I would focus on both physical removal in its theory and in its meme form, as I find the whole phenomena kind of interesting, so let's begin.
I must loot the country as fast as possible, because what I don't loot now, I will not be able to loot in the future.
Physical removal are two words most commonly associated with the right-wing libertarians and people who are either a part of or at least sympathetic to the alt-right. And it has appeared as a meme across Poll, Twitter, Facebook, and other social networks and forums alike, often depicting acts of throwing communists and Democrats out of helicopters for the purpose of physically removing them from your social order. This being a meme that has emerged mostly over the last 2 years or so, and I think this meme was perpetuated by a sort of split in the libertarian movement online, a split mostly perpetuated by the migrant crisis, in which a faction of the group started emphasizing the need for restricted immigration in the tradition of Murray Rothbard, Hans Hermann Hoppe, and Ludwig von Mises, Lew Rockwell, and pretty much the entire history of libertarian thinkers, while another group in contrast rejected this under the guise of statism and assumed a position of open borders. This being pushed by such names like Adam Kokesh, Jeffrey Tucker, and the actual US Libertarian Party, and furthermore people like Stefan Molyneux, Christopher Cantwell, and even Alex Jones were called traitors, and a lot of these types were even kicked from speaking at events. And when Trump became increasingly supported by these people, things just became more divided, and it seemed that the most popular branch of the libertarian movement online had taken a right-wing approach to politics, and although migration was the first issue to espouse such a shift, their general operations towards groups in their own countries began to change as well, so ideas that had become heresies in the libertarian movement since the days of Rothbard and Mises were again becoming essential premises in the ideology. Ideas like race realism, RK selection theory, anti-egalitarianism, anti-democracy, European exceptionalism, and others. However, one of the most controversial of these tenets was that of physical removal, which manifested itself not as much as a legitimate position, but as a meme, as a method of excommunicating from left libertarians and the so-called cucks of the movement. So, in celebration of libertarianism's regained identity, physical removal in its meme form became a crucial method of uniting libertarians with the right. For instance, to exemplify this, we have a standard good night left side button here, but in this case we have a leftist being thrown out of a helicopter, this kind of signaling to others that the uploader of this image or the commenter with this display picture is not just a libertarian, but a cool libertarian, successfully virtue signaling to other extreme right-wing groups. And then we have the reaction image meme of Hans Hermann Hoppe inserted into the standard tabloid talk show lie detector or DNA test result scenario, but the bottom macro says, "You will have to be physically removed." We have a parody of the Kermit reflection meme, but this one is extra spicy because not only is it not Kermit, it's Pepe. Up next we have a "Here comes dat boy" meme, but it's very forced, not even making sense. Then we actually have a later meme that came in response to the virtue signaling purist libertarians who would complain about these memes in the same way that they complain about Stefan Molyneux, as they haven't moved beyond the sentiment that taxation is theft and aren't ready to talk about greater society. Then we have a rare Hoppian snake meme demonstrating our economic literacy and our superior intelligence. And here we have a shirt, a Pinochet's helicopter tours, and we have a more subtle t-shirt using the Trump campaign shirt template, but with Chile inserted there, and so on. Now this meme is used firstly because it's pretty fucking funny, but occasionally as a means of purity testing. For instance, here is Christopher Cantwell physically removing Jeffrey Tucker through means of helicopter ride. Now we know that Cantwell is not an advocate of open borders, unlike Jeffrey Tucker. And such extremism, just like the Pepe gas chamber memes and the alt-right, generally make for good virtue signaling, so people who are new to hard-right politics can demonstrate their purity through showing their extremism, or more specifically, their extreme dislike of outsiders. And naturally, such extremism is also perpetuated by the rush brought about by the realization that you are right-wing, as it often feels liberating when you have an ideology shift. But anyway, what is physical removal as a doctrine? Do people actually believe Democrats should be physically removed from society?
I must loot the country as fast as possible, because what I don't loot now, I will not be able to loot in the future.
My ideal situation would be the abolition of the state, where the left has no access to a democratic process by which to elect a government. Short of that, so long as there is going to exist, I am all for, I am an aspiring helicopter pilot for the Pinochet administration. Throw these people out of helicopters, do what you have to stop them, because they will destroy us.
Of course, you don't mean that literally, but this is why he is banned from Twitter and Facebook right now. Just banter. Now, we have to go to break pretty quickly, but
Well, physical removal is an honest, rational position that people hold, being most commonly associated with the Austrian school economist Hans Hermann Hoppe, a much favoured author amongst right libertarians, particularly for his work Democracy, the God That Failed, in which Hoppe argues against democracy, claiming that traditional monarchies are preferable, whilst also arguing in favour of restricted immigration and all of the topics that can be seen as relevant to these positions. However, a certain part of the book is reserved for how a libertarian social order would operate, and how it is vastly contrasted by the left libertarian narratives of egalitarianism, moral relativism, and democracy. As it is common for left libertarians, or even non-right libertarians, people like the Libertarian Party, it's common for them to believe that excluding people from public property, such as by means of borders, is an infringement on liberty, and furthermore, Hoppe spends a portion of the book explaining how exclusion and discrimination are the very basis in which a property owner preserves his ownership, and hence private property, the very crux of libertarianism, is incompatible with democracy and egalitarianism. He writes how, in contrast, under the current welfare state, where property owners have been stripped of the right to exclude, and hence the freedom of association, employers cannot hire who they want, sellers cannot sell to whoever they want, buyers cannot buy from whoever they want, and private property owners cannot form covenants to associate with people who will increase the value of their own property. They cannot associate with people they believe to be mutually beneficial, as under a liberal democratic welfare state, they are subject to forced integration. Landlords are forced to live with bad renters, banks and insurance companies are not allowed to avoid bad risks, restaurants and bars must accommodate unwelcome customers, and private clubs and covenants are compelled to accept members and actions in violation of their own rules and restrictions, and none of which would occur under a system of absolute private property. Under a libertarian social order, private property owners would not permit the ill-behaved, lazy, unreliable, overly disruptive students, employees, or customers in order to increase their property value, and hence ill-behaved people, even those who have committed no crime, risk being expelled from civilized society, hence disincentivizing such behavior, in contrast to the current welfare state where parasitism and counterproductive behavior is subsidized and increased through welfare handouts and etc., etc. To quote Hans Hermann Hoppe on page 211 of Democracy, the God That Failed, he writes, quote, "A society in which the right to exclusion is fully restored to owners of private property would be profoundly unegalitarian, intolerant, and discriminatory. There would be little or no tolerance and open-mindedness, so dear to the left libertarians. Instead, one would be on the right path towards restoring the freedom of association and exclusion implied in the institution of private property. If only towns and villages could and would do what they did as a matter of course until well into the 19th century in Europe and the United States. There would be signs regarding entrance requirements for the town, and once in the town, requirements for entering specific pieces of property, for example, no beggars, bums, or homeless, but also no homosexuals, drug users, Jews, Muslims, Germans, or Zulus, and those who did not meet these entrance requirements would be kicked out as trespassers. Almost instantly, cultural and moral normalcy would reassert itself." End quote. Now, if there are any purist libertarians, Gary Johnson supporters, etc., you might be thinking, holy fuck, I picked the wrong ideology, and may be tempted to go back to your liberal Bernie Sanders supporting days not so long ago. And if you're on the hard right, you might be thinking this guy's pretty based, but nonetheless, this is Hoppe's outlook on a libertarian social order, and you can begin to see how such an outlook arrives one at physically removing communists and Democrats. Hopper continually reiterates that under a pure private property society, without continued and relentless discrimination exclusion, a libertarian society would erode and return to welfare state socialism, as every social order, including a libertarian or conservative one, requires a self-enforcement system. It is not enough to just have a libertarian society. Such a society must also have a means of enforcing itself, or perpetuating itself into the future. And I actually made a video on the need for libertarians to realize this fact, entitled Machiavelli vs. the Freedom Psyche, which I would highly recommend if you want to learn about some of the ideas behind this concept, if you want to hear my thoughts on this as usual, so the link's in the description. But to continue, although the means of a societal system sustaining itself is usually through the means of state institutions and coercion, this task in a libertarian social order is through its members making a conscious effort to arrange their property in such a manner to prevent it from disintegrating, which is conveniently the incentives of private property owners that come to tuition just in virtue of owning something. So, therefore, Hopper believes that egalitarianism and moral relativism may only exist in the fringes of society, perhaps by juveniles and young adults that haven't settled into family-constrained adulthood for only a brief period of time, contained only by contempt and ridicule. However, once mature members of society habitually express egalitarian, democratic, or communist ideas, there must be a greater planned mechanism to suppress it in order to protect the purpose of private property. And similarly, our tolerance of these ideas in the past is what has declined the West into its current state of cultural rot today. So, furthermore, on page 218, Hopper concludes, quote, "In a covenant among proprietor and community tenants for the purpose of protecting their private property, no such thing as a right to free, unlimited speech exists, not even to unlimited speech on one's own tenant property. One may say innumerable things and promote almost any idea under the sun, but naturally, no one is permitted to advocate ideas contrary to the very covenant of preserving and protecting private property, such as democracy and communism. There can be no tolerance towards Democrats and communists in a libertarian social order. They will have to be physically separated and removed from society. Likewise, in a covenant founded for the purpose of protecting family and kin, there can be no tolerance towards those habitually promoting lifestyles incompatible with this goal. They, the advocates of alternative non-family and kin-centered lifestyles, such as, for instance, individual hedonism, parasitism, nature-environment worship, homosexuality, or communism, will have to be physically removed from society too, if one is to maintain a libertarian order." End quote. And the challenge of Hopper's argument to libertarians is simple. If such a mechanism doesn't exist in a libertarian social order, what is it to stop society declining back into socialism? If the existence of this ideal civilization hinges merely on people believing in the NAP, the non-aggression principle, what is to stop people from believing the contrary? Populations are capable of believing all sorts of barbaric or degenerate things. Even still, does Hopper's outlook violate the NAP in itself? If someone in such a commune legitimately owns their property, how can they be physically removed without initiating coercion against them? Now, maybe them wanting to redistribute your property is an aggression in itself, so you are just reacting to them. But is the belief in democracy or communism really an aggression? Can a belief be an aggression? To reword, have you become an aggressor at some moment when you accept a proposition as true? This seems at least challenging to the realism of libertarianism if libertarians are to be consistent with the NAP. But anyway, thanks for watching everyone. As usual, remember to follow me on Twitter. I'm posting just the freshest memes, so just come along, it's good fun. And if you're feeling generous, head over to my Patreon. Even just $1 a month goes a really long way. Like, if everybody gave $1 a month, I'd be making these videos all day. And again, you can find my videos at therationalrise.com if you want to check that out. And just, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and stay lit, fam. Laters.